Hi and welcome back. In this video, we are going to look at item analysis, and we are still within the topic of traditional assessments, specifically testing process. So when exactly do we do item analysis in similar manner and the timeline that we perform our measures of central tendency? After we have done our test administrations, we have done our scoring and grading. Now that we have a set of student scores in our hands or our data set, and then we can perform item analysis. Okay, so let's move on to the slides. Okay, so generally we do item analysis because we want to measure the effectiveness of our items, and also because we want to measure the effectiveness of our test. And there are two ways in which we can measure this effectiveness: by carrying out item difficulty as well as item discrimination. So these are the subcomponents under item analysis. However, in this video, I'm going to focus only on item difficulty. All right, so let's continue. So why do we need to analyze item? It is not in similar manner with carrying out measures of central tendency, because with measures of central tendency, it enables us to compare performances between schools, within group, across groups, and etc. etc. But when we carry out item analysis, we want to identify and determine the effectiveness of our tests and items that we have developed in gearing towards making sure that they are effective when we are developing tests again in the future. Okay, right. So when we develop our test as teachers, we have certain intentions or certain aspects that we desire from this test. We have allocated certain number of items that are meant to be easy, mid-level of difficulty, and that are meant to be difficult items. Okay, we are also wanting our test scores to be able to tell us who are the students in the high ability groups and who are the students in the low ability group, so that we can better target our teaching after that. So by carrying out item analysis, specifically looking at item difficulty, we are able to identify whether has our test functioned the manner that it was intended to be. Say, for example, we have decided that we want to have 50% items, maybe 70% items at LOTS level, and 30% of items at HOTS level. So by carrying out item difficulty index, we're able to see whether have our items really targeted or being perceived by students to be difficult or easy, for example. By carrying out item difficulty, it also provides us with information whether have we arranged our items accordingly from the easiest to the most difficult. Okay, so these are specific aspects that the analysis on item difficulty is able to provide us and answer this information. Okay. All right, so let's continue. I'm going to skip this part and get right into item difficulty index. So we are going to look at how can we calculate item difficulty indices. So one index, more than one indices. Okay, so this is the formula for calculating item difficulty. Don't get nervous. I do understand that for some students, particularly who claim themselves to be the right brainer, okay, may be smitten when they look at numbers and values and whatnot. But this is low-level calculations. You'll be able to do this perfectly. Do not worry. Do not fret. Okay. All right, before we start with calculating item difficulty indices, let me just provide a few background information. What exactly is the data that we use to calculate our item difficulty? We use the scores that students obtained in order for us to measure whether our items are difficult or otherwise. Okay, so where do we get this scores from? From the process of test administration. Remember, in your assignment, you are required to carry out the process of test administration, where you get people to answer your items. Now, after they have answered and responded to your test items, you will be performing the process of scoring and grading, where you go through students' responses and interpret these responses in relation to score value. All right. Now that you have gotten a set of scores, then is the time to carry out this item analysis. Okay. So when you carry out this test administration process, because this is meant for teacher trainees who are still within the process of learning to become teachers, you don't have to test out the entire test paper. What you need to get the students to answer are only the sections that has or have multiple choice questions or any other forms of objective questions. Okay, so for example, your test consists of two sections. Section A, objective questions, and section B, subjective questions. When you carry out the process of test administration, it will be done mostly on virtual platforms, I'm sure. You'll be just transferring your test items into Google Forms format and then share the link with the respective respondents. Okay, so when you transfer your test items onto this Google Form format, you only need to transfer your objective items only. You don't have to put in your subjective items. Why? Because the formula for item analysis is only applicable for objective items, not subjective. So since we want to use these responses to calculate our item difficulty, we only get these responses based on our objective items. So what are examples of objective items? A lot. For example, multiple choice questions, fill in the blank questions, coloring, labeling, matching, completion, closed passage. So all of these are objective items. So if you do have any of these items, these are the kind of items that you need to include in your test administration process. Am I making myself clear? I hope so. If not, you can always ask me later via WhatsApp and whatnot. Okay, so now let's get our feet wet and start calculating item difficulty index. All right. So the formula is for calculating item difficulty index. Okay, the notation is P and not D because D is reserved for item discriminations. Okay, remember when we calculate index is specific. We calculate item difficulty index by individual items. So, if you teachers administer your test and your test consists of 40 multiple choice questions, so you have to calculate 40 times of these difficulty indices, one index for every item. So 40 items, 40 different indices. Okay, so item difficulty index for item 1, all right, total number of students who answered item 1 correctly divided by total number of students who sat for the test. Okay, so say for example, 30 students sit for the test, and for item 1, out of these 30 students, 15 students have answered item 1 correctly. So what do you get? 0.5. Ta-da! Okay, so this is how you calculate item difficulty index. So it goes by item, but it's pretty simple, right? Okay. So let us do a bit more exercise so that we get better hang of this. So item difficulty index for item 2, 30 students sit for the test. Nobody answered item 2 correctly. So you get 0. Okay. There's also another exercise on the back page of this. And the total number of students who sit for the test is 50. Right. So item difficulty index for item 3, for example, 50 students sit for the test, and slightly more than half of these students managed to get this item correct. So you get 0.54. All right. So of course, calculating the index is only the first layer, the easier part. A more difficult part is to interpret what exactly does this index mean. Okay. So item difficulty index ranges from 0 to 1. Let me just tilt this. Are we able to be captured? Okay, we are. 0 to 1. Okay. 1 means the item is too easy. 0 means the item is too difficult. For example, like I've mentioned just now, item difficulty index for item 2, okay, 30 students sit for the test. All of these 30 students answered item 2 incorrectly. So you get 0. It's too difficult. Nobody get the item right. Okay. On the other hand, say for example, item 4, 30 students sit for the test. All of these students answered item 4 correctly. So you get 1. The item is too easy, and that is why everybody manages to get the answer right. Clear? Okay. So it's pretty simple. If you get 0, that means that everybody flunked the item. If you get 1, everybody scored the item correctly. Okay. So 0.5 indicates that the item is of mid level of difficulty. Okay. Something like this, not visible by the camera. Dang it. Okay. Well, you can refer to the slide anyway. So quite easy, isn't it? Now let's look at this. Of course, life is never easy. So let's spice things up a bit. This is a data set based on 2 multiple choice items. We have item 1 and item 2. Okay, so we have 4 options, pilihan jawapan. And for each of these items, these are the number of people who selected these particular options, which means that for item 1, nobody answered A, 3 people answered B, 24 students answered C, and 3 students answered D. Okay, so for these 2 respective items, C is the correct answer for item 1, and A is the key for item 2. Right? So how do we calculate item difficulty indices for these 2 items? Easier than the first one, because we know exactly how many people get answered all of these. Okay, let me just demonstrate here. Item difficulty index for item 1, we know that there are 30 people who sat for the test, because altogether we have 30 here and 30 here. And for item 1, 24 students answered item 1 correctly. Okay. And for item 2, 30 students answered item 2. 30 students sat for the test, and 12 students, because this is the correct answer, 12 students answered item 2 correctly. Now, based on this, please calculate the item difficulty indices. I've given this. You just need to add up and divide. Okay. No, you only need to divide, and then you get your indices. No? Okay, so you can refer to the slide in order for you to identify the break-off point. Some literature would say that the cutoff point between easy, moderate, and difficult items are 0.2, 80% and above. That means that 0.8 and above, 0.8 to 1 in terms of difficulty index is considered as easy item. 0 to 0.3 are considered as difficult items, and the mid-range item are within the index of 0.3 to 0.8. Okay, so you can refer to this, or you can also use the one that I have just mentioned, the cutoff point between 0.25 to 0.75. Okay, either one is okay, not really much of a major difference. All right, so we have looked at this and we have discussed this in quite detail just a few minutes ago. All right, so when we are answering the questions in assignment 2 in our assignment with regard to item difficulty, when the question asks, for example, which item is the more difficult item, which item is easier, which item is effective, for example. So for any kind of information that you provide when you answer these kinds of questions, make sure that you provide 3 information for each question. Please state which item, what's the index, and what does the index mean. Okay, for example, of the 2 items, which item is more difficult? So when you are answering that questions, provide 3 information. Again, state the index, state the item, and also provide the interpretation of the index. What does the index mean, right? So for example, a more difficult item of the 2 items is item 2, so state the item, with the difficulty index of 0.4. State the index. The item is difficult because only 40% of students in the class managed to answer the item correctly. So that's what the index means. Okay, or you can just simplify. The item is difficult because only 40% answer the item correctly. Or the item is difficult because the index is 0.4. That's the closer index to 0 within the range of difficult items. So that's a longer version of the explanation. Okay, I think that's about it. That basically covers what item difficulty is. We've looked at the rationale behind calculating item difficulty. We've looked at the formula and also the range of easy, moderate, and difficulty items. And we have done a bit of exercises in calculating item difficulty indices. So in the next video, we are going to focus on one exercise that has a set of items based on a set of data set. Okay, so we'll do that in our next video. Till then, take care and Assalamualaikum. Bye everyone.